Inside the marble atrium of the Palatine Hill, 3 slaves kneel in silence while a woman stands before them, her wrists bound in crimson silk that once marked nobility. The year is 71 AD. The air smells of myrrh and sweat, the aftermath of victory, perfuming defeat. Her name is Callista, though the chronicler watching from the shadows will never write it. He will record only that she was beautiful, that she was the wife of a rebel prince from Judea, and that she was presented to Emperor Vespasian as part of the triumphal spoils that followed the fall of Jerusalem. The first soldier has finished wiping blood from his armor. The second adjusts the laurel wreath on his head. The third does not look at her at all. He has seen too many captives to remember faces. Kalista is not yet aware that her survival has already been decided for her. The Senate has voted a triumph. She will live until the crowd finishes cheering. Outside, the city prepares for spectacle. Garlands hang from columns. Bakers shape loaves in the likeness of eagles. Children practice chants that will echo across the forum when Titus rides in behind his father's chariot. The sound of hammers fills the streets as carpenters raise wooden stands for spectators. In the heart of this noise, Kalista is washed in perfumed water by hands that do not tremble. The attendants whisper that her husband died bravely, that his last words defied Rome, that his eyes burned with the fire of a faith that refused to bow. They say these things not to comfort her, but to remind themselves of what courage once looked like. None of them know that Vespasian has ordered her kept alive to parade his mercy, that her body will walk in chains so the empire can congratulate itself on its clemency. By dawn, the Palatine vibrates with the rhythm of drums. Kalista is led to the marble portico where other captives wait. Behind her stands a line of priests, scholars, generals' wives, all reduced to symbols for a morning's entertainment. The trumpets sound, the gates open. A river of voices rolls through the streets. She steps forward into light so sharp it erases everything she remembers of home. The road beneath her feet is strewn with petals that stick to the damp skin of her ankles. The air tastes of incense and dust. To her right, she glimpses the cages where the rebels' sons are kept. To her left, statues of the gods glare down with blank approval. The city is watching. The city wants to see what it means to conquer not just a people, but the women who carried their lineage. A scribe records details for posterity. Height, age, demeanor, beauty. He will describe how she walked with composure, how the crowd murmured admiration even through its hatred, how Vespasian himself smiled slightly when she passed beneath his platform. He will not mention what happened afterward. When the triumph ends, when the crowd disperses and the generals ascend to dine beneath frescoes of Jupiter, the captives are separated according to use. The men go to execution, the boys to slavery, the women to the imperial household. Rome classifies mercy as meticulously as it classifies taxes. Kalista is taken to the Domus Flavia. The walls there gleam with imported marble, the floors patterned in black and white to remind visitors that life is divided into conquerors and conquered. She is shown to a chamber where light filters through thin fabric dyed Tyrian purple. On a table sits a silver bowl of fruit that has been carved but not eaten. A eunuch informs her that the emperor may wish to speak with her, that she should appear grateful. Gratitude in Rome is a survival skill. She bows her head, though the movement feels like someone else's body obeying. The eunuch closes the door. For a long time, she listens to her own breathing and tries to remember the sound of her children laughing. It comes faintly, like music from another lifetime. At sunset, the emperor's steward enters. He is polite. His politeness frightens her more than cruelty would. He explains that Rome honors noble women who show understanding, that resistance brings only pain. He tells her stories of other queens, Berenice of Cilicia, Zenobia of Palmyra, Cleopatra, women who learned how to transform defeat into something palatable for history. He does not mention that every one of them was discarded when her usefulness waned. He gestures toward the balcony where the city sprawls below like a living mosaic. He says, "Look, Rome spares what it admires." She follows his gaze. The streets shimmer with torchlight. Somewhere down there, her husband's headless body is being burned to prevent relics from forming. She wonders whether the flames reach as high as the palace walls. Days turn into measured ritual. Callista learns to walk the courtyards in silence, to accept the offerings of visiting senators' wives who come to see the famous captive. They ask questions that sound like sympathy, but are really confessions of relief. "You poor dear," one says. "How strong you must be." Another asks whether her people will now finally learn obedience. They bring her perfumes and linen as if generosity could disguise the stench of conquest. She thanks them all. Gratitude becomes armor, thinner than silk, but harder than iron. The chronicler notes her composure again. He writes that she adapted well to Roman life, that she smiled when spoken to by the emperor, that she was seen walking with his son in the gardens. He writes these things because Rome believes appearances create truth. But there are rooms where appearances fade. In the subterranean baths beneath the palace, steam obscures faces and voices carry secrets. Servants whisper that Kalista has been chosen for a ceremony honoring Jupiter Victor, that she will pour the libation before the statue as a symbol of the emperor's generosity to defeated nations. The whisper carries laughter. Everyone knows what such ceremonies mean. The libation is wine and the cup is her body. In Rome, the gods are fed through the humiliation of the conquered. The wives of enemies are offerings that prove the empire's divine right. No decree records these acts. They live in rumor and ritual, in the way torches are dimmed when processions pass, the way courtiers avert their eyes from the inner rooms of the palace. The night before the festival, Kalista dreams of her husband standing on the walls of their city. He looks as he did before the siege, unbroken, shouting defiance into the wind. She tries to speak, but her mouth fills with ash. When she wakes, the lamps are still burning. A slave girl sits nearby holding a tray with a small cup. "Drink," she whispers. "It helps you walk without trembling." Kalista takes it. The taste is sweet and bitter at once. Her heartbeat slows. Her thoughts blur. She realizes that the empire does not always kill directly. It prefers transformation. Tomorrow she will no longer be a wife, a mother, or even a captive. She will be Rome's story, told in marble, whispered in corridors, rewritten each time a new victory demands a new morale. When the procession begins, the forum glitters like a sea of gold. Senators line the steps. Priests chant prayers of thanksgiving. The emperor ascends to his throne. Kalista steps forward with the cup in her hands, her wrists bare, her eyes fixed on the statue of Jupiter. The crowd watches in silence. For a moment, she feels almost weightless, as if her body no longer belongs to earth. Then the drums strike. She lifts the cup and pours. The wine splashes onto the altar, dark as blood. The emperor nods. The ceremony is complete. The empire is satisfied. What happens after will not be written, but it will be remembered in ways words cannot capture, in the shiver that passes through the women watching from the terraces, in the sudden silence of the crowd as the trumpets fade. Rome has shown mercy again. Inside the villa at Antium, torches flicker against mosaic walls, showing battles no one living remembers. 4 women stand barefoot on cold marble, their hair loosened, their faces streaked with tears that no longer fall. It is 117 AD. The Emperor Trajan has returned from Dacia, and the empire's victory has its price in flesh. The wives and daughters of Dacian nobles were brought to Italy as part of the spoils. One of them, Sura, waits as the attendants prepare her for presentation. She is young enough that her wrists still bear the faded pattern of gold that once marked her status. The guards speak in low tones, joking that barbarian queens are softer than they look. A priest murmurs prayers to ensure the ceremony pleases the gods. Sura says nothing. She has learned that silence is safer than dignity. The chronicler in the corner writes by lamplight, his tablet resting on his knee. He notes her stillness, the faint mark of a bruise near her collarbone, the way her eyes fix on the mosaic showing Mars trampling a naked man. He records none of the voices that fill the room, none of the laughter, none of the small cruelties that make conquest feel like celebration. Outside, the sea breaks softly against the rocks. Rome calls it peace. The women call it survival. By dawn, the emperor's procession begins. From the port to the forum, crowds gather to watch the spoils of the Dacian war displayed in carts of silver and gold. Between them walk captives draped in white, their wrists bound in silk to remind the people that mercy, too, can be decoration. The Senate sits in judgment on raised platforms. Every face in the city turns toward the parade. Sura walks at the front, her head held high, by habit rather than pride. The chain around her neck glints in the morning light, delicate enough to look ornamental, heavy enough to bruise. Behind her, the Dacian king's sister stumbles. The crowd laughs. Rome prefers its enemies humbled but still breathing. When the triumph ends, the captives are taken to the temple of Jupiter Capitolinus for ritual dedication. The men will die quickly, their heads will hang from the rostra by noon. The women are led into the inner court, where incense burns thick enough to sting the eyes. A priest announces that their beauty is an offering to the gods who granted victory. The words are ancient, the meaning new each time. The bodies of conquered queens are to be consecrated through humiliation. The chronicler looks away. He will later write that the ceremony was dignified, that the emperor showed restraint, that Rome's greatness lies in its clemency. He will omit what follows in the silence between chants, the muffled cries that the choir drowns out, the blood that will be washed from the marble before evening. Sura is chosen for the emperor's villa. The attendants explain that this is an honor. Few are kept in the imperial household. She will live in rooms filled with light, wear clothes finer than any in her homeland, dine on fruits that never grow in Dacia. They do not mention that she will never see her language again, that her name will fade, that her children, if she bears any, will belong to Rome, not her. When she asks whether the other women are alive, the steward smiles and says Rome rewards those who accept their fate. It is not an answer. The days that follow unfold like a performance she cannot end. Musicians play in the atrium while senators visit to glimpse the emperor's generosity. They look at her the way collectors study a rare artifact. They praise the smoothness of her skin, the clarity of her voice, the calmness with which she stands beside her captor. They call her the spoils of civilization. The emperor calls her his peace offering to the gods. She learns that peace, in Latin, tastes of iron and honey. She learns that Rome's mercy is indistinguishable from possession. She learns that her silence feeds a myth stronger than any army. At night, she dreams of her husband. She remembers the hilltop where he fell, the moment the standard of the eagle rose above the smoke, the cry that ran through the ranks when his head was lifted high. She remembers the cold weight of the ring he pressed into her palm before battle. She had promised to keep it safe. Now it lies hidden beneath a tile in her chamber floor, the only secret she still owns. When she wakes, the world smells of oil lamps and crushed roses. The marble floor reflects her image back at her, unfamiliar and flawless, as if even reflection must obey the empire. Rumors spread through the court. Some say the emperor will marry her to a general to legitimize new lands. Others say she will be sent to a temple as a priestess, her body repurposed as holy property. Each rumor means the same thing. She has ceased to be herself. Her value lies only in what she represents. The chronicler records her presence at a banquet, noting how she smiled when a senator toasted Rome's victories, how she raised her cup without trembling. He does not describe the crack in her voice when she spoke a prayer in her own tongue, thinking no one would understand. He does not describe how the musician stopped playing for a heartbeat before resuming as if nothing had happened. The palace servants begin to mimic her accent for amusement. They say she walks like a statue and eats like a ghost. One, bolder than the rest, asks whether Dacian women love their men as fiercely as Romans love power. She answers only by turning away. The steward watching from the doorway nods approval. Obedience looks good in reports. In the spring, she is summoned to the emperor's private garden. He sits beneath a cypress tree, dictating a letter to the Senate. When he sees her, he gestures for the scribe to leave. He tells her that Rome has a way of transforming enemies into family. He says it as if offering comfort. Then he rises and touches her cheek with the hand that once signed decrees of execution. His eyes are cold, not cruel, just certain. She understands that her body has become a treaty. The unspeakable is not the act itself, but the ease with which it happens, the routine of empire cloaked in ceremony. Afterward, she walks the length of the garden until she reaches the reflecting pool. The sky above it is violet, streaked with the last light of day. In the water, she sees two images, her own face and the statue of Venus rising from marble behind her. Both are beautiful. Both are property. The reflection ripples when a breeze passes. For a moment, she thinks of throwing herself into the pool, of ending the story before it can be rewritten again. Then she hears the distant chant of soldiers drilling beyond the palace walls, the eternal pulse of Rome reminding her that even death would belong to the emperor. That night, she burns the hem of her gown on a lamp flame, watching the fabric curl and blacken. The smell is sharp, almost sweet. She whispers her name into the smoke and imagines it rising above the palace, drifting over the city, out to the sea where no Roman sails dare follow. She knows the smoke will vanish before dawn. Still, it feels like a small rebellion, a fragment of herself carried beyond the reach of empire. Tomorrow she will walk the courtyards again, smile when commanded, speak in a language that was never hers. The chronicler will record that the emperor's peace reigns unbroken. He will not know that in the quiet of her heart, a name once whispered in a forgotten tongue still defies the world's most powerful man. Inside the golden chamber of the Domus Aurea, torches flicker against walls painted with gardens that no longer exist. The air smells of burnt cedar and wine. It is 69 AD, the year of 4 emperors, and every corridor whispers betrayal. The young woman kneeling before the throne once wore the diadem of an Eastern queen. Now her jewels are gone, replaced by a chain so thin it gleams like a thread of light. Her name is Thea. She was the wife of a governor who dared to defy Rome during the civil wars, and her beauty has outlasted his rebellion. Nero had kept her alive for amusement, Galba, for example, Otho for revenge. Each emperor remakes her into a symbol of his rule. Her body is the empire's mirror. The chronicler assigned to record the transition of power stands near the doorway, stylus trembling in his hand. He writes that Thea was brought to the emperor to demonstrate the return of order, that mercy triumphed over wrath, that Rome is once again governed by reason. He writes these lies because Rome demands them. He does not write about the silence that falls when the emperor's hand traces the chain along Thea's throat, or the faint mark where a previous ruler's ring once pressed too hard against her skin. He does not write about the way she bows, as if rehearsed for generations, the motion as perfect as any prayer. Outside, soldiers drink to the new regime, their laughter echoing across the Palatine Hill. Inside, the emperor asks her to speak of loyalty. She tells him that loyalty is a word carved into stone by men who have forgotten its meaning. Her voice is steady. He laughs, delighted by defiance wrapped in grace. Rome adores performance. He calls her clever, calls her his hostage and his muse, his reminder that empires are measured not by land, but by obedience. Thea says nothing. She has learned that words are dangerous currency. The emperor rewards her silence with gold and exile to a villa near Baiae. The chronicler writes she was granted peace. He does not know that peace in Rome means invisibility. In the villa, she watches the horizon darken over the sea each night and listens to the laughter of senators' wives who visit to see the famous captive. They come draped in silk, pretending curiosity is compassion. They ask what it feels like to lose everything, how one survives disgrace, whether the rumors of noble women's treatment are true. Thea answers with practiced serenity. She says Rome is merciful. She says the emperor is generous. They nod, relieved. Their husbands will sleep easier knowing that conquest can be made elegant. In the servants' quarters, the slaves whisper about her. They say she drinks from gold and eats alone. They say she writes letters she never sends. Some claim she poisons her candles with herbs that make the air shimmer. Others say she talks to ghosts. They do not know that she writes not letters, but names, of women who vanished before her, of wives paraded through triumphs, of daughters taken as symbols. She writes them on scraps of wax, then melts them over the lamp flame, sending their ashes upward like prayers to gods who do not answer. At the edge of the empire, another queen learns her fate. In Britannia, Boudicca's daughters lie beneath Roman tents. Their screams echo through the forest where their mother's army once marched. The Roman legate orders silence, and silence obeys. His men laugh that Rome has tamed another province. The chronicler traveling with a legion will write that discipline restored order. He will not mention the blood on the ground, nor the eyes of soldiers who cannot meet his gaze. The pattern repeats across the world. Rebellion answered by spectacle, spectacle sanctified by custom, custom disguised as virtue. In the capital, the Senate debates morality. A philosopher rises to praise Roman restraint. He says their treatment of defeated queens proves the empire's greatness. He quotes Cicero, speaks of civilization and law. No one in the marble hall asks about the cost. No one mentions the wives locked in imperial villas, the daughters married to their father's killers, the women whose faces decorate coins as trophies of submission. They are present in every feast, invisible in every decree. Their names are erased so completely that only the empire's monuments remember them. Faceless figures carved beneath triumphal arches, forever looking up at the men who destroyed them. Thea's story spreads through the court in fragments. Some say she has become the emperor's prophetess, predicting victories in the east. Others whisper she tends gardens filled with poisonous flowers that bloom only under moonlight. When Otho's reign collapses and Vitellius marches on Rome, soldiers ransack her villa. They drag her into the courtyard and demand the imperial treasures. She points to the sea. They laugh and turn away. When they return moments later, she's gone. The tide is red that night, but no body washes ashore. The chronicler, now in service to Vitellius, writes that Thea died peacefully, a victim of exhaustion. He files the record beside hundreds of others, each one labeled with the same word: pacified. Years pass. Emperors rise and fall. The marble walls crumble. The chronicler's tablets molder in archives no one visits. Only statues remain, silent and perfect. Tourists centuries later will marvel at their craftsmanship, at the curve of stone that captures sorrow and pride. They will not know that those faces once belonged to women who watched their worlds burn. They will not hear the voices that once echoed through these halls, asking only to be remembered. Far from Rome, in a village by the Nile, another ceremony begins. The Emperor Hadrian has ordered a new temple built to celebrate the unity of the empire. Local priests bring offerings, gold, incense, and a woman. She's the widow of a rebel chief, her body marked with ink prayers that once called on her gods for protection. Now those same prayers are a curiosity to the empire. The Roman governor explains that the emperor honors all faiths, that the widow will serve as priestess to Rome's gods as well as her own. He does not mention that her priesthood begins with violation. When she kneels before the altar, the chant changes language. Latin words replace Egyptian, and the crowd shouts praise to Jupiter. Her name is lost beneath the echo. In the distance, the desert wind carries sand across the temple steps. The governor's wife watches from the shadows, her hands clenched around a veil. She knows what this ceremony means. She knows that every empire feeds itself on the silence of its women. She turns away, whispering a prayer she no longer believes will be heard. The chronicler, standing beside her, writes that harmony has been achieved between Rome and Egypt. His stylus scratches the surface of the tablet, carving order over chaos, beauty over suffering, victory over truth. Back in Rome, marble dust fills the air as new arches rise to commemorate new triumphs. Sculptors carve rows of captive women kneeling, their heads bowed beneath the weight of invisible chains. Senators stroll past and nod approval. Artists, they say, have captured the essence of peace. No one questions why peace always looks like surrender. The children of those sculpted women play in courtyards, their skin the color of many provinces, their tongues blending Latin with forgotten songs. They are Rome's future, born from the wreckage of others' pasts. In the archives, a young scribe finds a damaged tablet. The words are faint, half erased. He reads only fragments. Wife, captured, silence, smoke. He wonders who she was, then returns to his work. History moves forward, tidy and selective. The voices beneath the marble remain unheard, the women's names dissolved like salt in the Tiber. Their absence is the empire's most enduring monument. In the emperor's private chamber, moonlight spills through latticed windows onto a floor of black marble veined with white. The scent of burning sandalwood drifts upward as if the air itself wishes to flee. It is 193 AD, the night after the death of Pertinax, and Rome stands on the edge of chaos. In a corner of the room, a woman sits motionless, her wrists crossed in her lap. She is Aurelia, widow of the man executed for plotting against Commodus. 2 days ago, she was property of the state. Tonight, she is property of the new emperor. In Rome, the difference is ceremonial. The chronicler, assigned to record events of the transition, waits outside the door. He hears nothing but the slow rhythm of footsteps and the murmur of a voice too soft to distinguish. His tablet is ready. Tomorrow, he will write that the emperor secured his authority through divine favor and mercy toward the families of traitors. He will call the mercy unprecedented. He will call the widow grateful. He will not write that her gratitude was extracted in the dark, or that her silence was the price of her life. At dawn, the city wakes to news of stability restored. Processions fill the streets, and the emperor appears on the balcony above the forum, his robe glowing in sunlight. The crowd cheers his name. Below, Aurelia stands among attendants, her body draped in gold-threaded linen. To the people, she represents forgiveness, the proof that Rome's justice spares the repentant. Her face, painted in calm submission, becomes another story for poets to recite. Behind the mask of paint, her eyes drift toward the horizon where her husband's ashes rest in an unmarked grave. She tells herself she will not cry before the mob. She tells herself there is power in restraint. By midday, the Senate meets in the Curia Julia. The debate concerns propriety, virtue, and Rome's image to the provinces. A senator from Africa proposes that wives of executed rebels should be consecrated as symbols of peace, serving the gods who guarantee loyalty. The chamber applauds. Another senator suggests sending them as gifts to newly conquered governors to secure alliances. The chronicler writes every word. None speak of humanity. None mention the screams that echo through the palace each night. Rome's virtue has always been most convincing when written on the bodies of its enemies' women. In the villa beyond the Aventine, preparations begin for the next festival of victory. Artisans carve reliefs of bound captives. Painters sketch women offering laurel wreaths to emperors. The pattern never changes. Each new ruler inherits the rituals of the last. The chronicler learns to copy old phrases: divine justice, imperial clemency, restored peace. He knows these words will outlive the people they describe. He wonders whether truth itself ever mattered. Aurelia's role expands. She is summoned to greet foreign envoys, to stand beside the emperor at banquets, to smile when dignitaries toast Roman mercy. She wears jewels once belonging to another captured queen. The servants call her the living peace. She endures their whispers with the patience of stone. The chronicler observes her during ceremonies, admiring the way she seems to float through rooms untouched by the stares around her. He imagines she must feel nothing. He is wrong. She feels everything and shows nothing. In this, she has become Roman. At night, she returns to her chamber overlooking the garden. The fountains murmur softly, disguising the quiet sobs of slaves punished for some forgotten mistake. She sits at a bronze mirror and traces her reflection. Her face looks older than her years. She thinks of her husband, of the moment soldiers dragged him through the atrium, of the silence that followed. She wonders whether he would know her now. She wonders whether anyone would. In the courtyard below, a new shipment of captives arrives from Germania. Among them are 2 women, sisters of a tribal leader who dared to revolt. They are brought before the steward, their hair still matted with mud from the road. He studies them with the eye of a merchant assessing livestock. The younger is chosen for the imperial household, the elder for the temple of Venus, where she will serve as sacred offering. The chronicler records their names, but knows they will soon be forgotten. The younger weeps quietly as she is led away. The elder stares at the ground, lips moving in a language no one understands. That night, the temple glows with oil lamps. Priests chant prayers of purification as the elder sister stands naked before the statue of the goddess. The ritual, they claim, will cleanse her of barbarism and bind her to Rome. The high priest pours wine over her head. The crowd murmurs approval. The chronicler, watching from the shadows, feels his stomach turn but continues to write. He writes because history demands witnesses, even when witnessing is betrayal. Back in the palace, the younger sister is introduced to Aurelia. The emperor presents her as a gift, a token of gratitude for Aurelia's devotion. She is told the girl will serve as companion and attendant. Aurelia studies her face, sees the same fear that once lived in her own, and feels something break quietly inside. She takes the girl's hand and says nothing. The emperor smiles, pleased by the illusion of harmony. He believes he has created peace between conqueror and conquered. Weeks pass. The girl follows Aurelia everywhere, learning her habits, mimicking her gestures. Sometimes, late at night, Aurelia hears her whisper prayers in her native tongue. She does not stop her. She listens and remembers her own lost words, the ones she buried beneath Roman speech. The 2 women share a language of glances and silence. In that silence, rebellion begins to grow. When the emperor departs for the northern front, he leaves the palace in their care. The guards remain, but discipline softens. One evening, Aurelia walks with the girl through the gardens. The air is thick with jasmine. Beneath the cypress trees, they pause beside a fountain shaped like a lion. Aurelia kneels, dips her hand in the water and whispers, "Freedom." The girl repeats the word as if tasting it. Aurelia tells her of a plan. When the next procession comes, when the city celebrates another victory, they will disappear into the crowd. The girl nods, eyes shining with a hope she has never dared to feel. The day arrives. Rome erupts in celebration. Trumpets blare. Crowds press close to glimpse the returning legions. Aurelia and the girl move among them disguised as priestesses. For a moment, the city's roar drowns their footsteps. They reach the edge of the forum where merchants shout and children chase garlands through the dust. Freedom is a heartbeat away. Then a soldier recognizes the girl. He shouts, the crowd parts. In seconds, they are surrounded. The chronicler, standing on a platform above, sees the scene unfold. He watches as soldiers drag them back through the mob. He writes that 2 women were caught attempting to desecrate the triumph. He does not write that the older woman's veil slipped, revealing eyes filled not with fear, but with defiance. He does not write that the younger spat at her captors. He does not write that the emperor, upon hearing of the escape, ordered their punishment swift and silent. That night, torches burn low in the courtyard. The chronicler stands among the witnesses as sentences are carried out. The girl dies first, her body still trembling when the rope tightens. Aurelia follows without a word. The emperor's steward declares justice served. The chronicler dips his stylus in ink and writes the line that will enter the archives. Peace restored. He does not look at the bodies carried away. He knows Rome builds peace from bones. In the morning, the city wakes to sunlight and forgets. Merchants open their stalls. Children play beside the fountains. The chronicler hands his tablet to an archivist, who files it among thousands of others. Another story begins, another empire momentarily content. Somewhere, beneath the stones of the courtyard, the last echo of a woman's voice lingers, whispering a word no Roman dared to record. In the ruins of Carthage, the sun sets blood red over broken columns. The year is 238 AD, and Rome has come again to remind the world that resistance is punished through ritual, not chaos. The city smells of smoke and salt. At the center of the forum stands a platform draped in purple cloth. 2 figures kneel before it. The widow of a Carthaginian governor and her daughter, both taken after the rebellion's end. Soldiers line the square, their armor reflecting the dying light. The crowd waits, hushed, for the spectacle to begin. Above them, the imperial banner hangs motionless in the still air. The widow's name is Salonia, the daughter's Flavia. No chronicler will write those names, though they will record everything else. The precision of the soldiers' march, the gleam of bronze helmets, the applause when the governor's widow is brought forward. The chronicler will describe the emperor's speech about peace restored, loyalty renewed, Rome's generosity to its enemies. He will not describe the tremor in Salonia's hands as she lifts her chin, or the way her daughter bites her lip until blood stains her teeth. A priest steps forward holding a torch. He announces that the women will dedicate the new temple to the emperor's divinity. The ritual, he says, symbolizes Rome's forgiveness. The meaning is older and simpler. It means submission. The women are stripped of their garments, clothed instead in white linen that glows in the torchlight. The priest recites prayers. The crowd repeats them, 1,000 voices echoing words they barely understand. Salonia kneels, touches her forehead to the marble, and whispers a prayer not to Rome's gods, but to her own. Her daughter follows, tears silent against her cheeks. The emperor nods. The priest lowers the torch to the brazier. Smoke curls upward, carrying the smell of burning oil. The crowd cheers. Somewhere in that noise, Flavia looks at her mother, and the two share a final glance that says what no record ever will, that memory can survive even where freedom cannot. The ritual ends. The women vanish into the temple. By morning, only ashes remain. The chronicler writes that Rome brought peace to Africa, that the emperor's justice shone like sunlight across the provinces. He seals his tablet and hands it to the archivist. It joins hundreds like it, all telling the same story. Rome civilizes, Rome forgives, Rome endures. The truth that Rome devours fades between the lines. Centuries later, archaeologists will uncover carvings in the ruins. They will see two female figures kneeling before a flame, one older, one younger. They will label the piece Allegory of Submission. They will not guess it was carved by a soldier who watched that day, who could not forget the look in the daughter's eyes as the fire took her mother. History will praise Rome's artistry, not its cruelty. Far from the ruins, in the eternal city itself, marble walls still whisper the stories of women turned to shadows. Statues of goddesses line the palaces, their serene faces sculpted from the features of captives whose real names are gone. Every arch of triumph that tourists pass beneath once echoed with the footsteps of chained wives. The Tiber still carries their ashes. The empire's stones are mortared with silence. In the modern age, scholars will celebrate Rome's order, its law, its discipline. They will speak of emperors as visionaries, of generals as heroes, of triumphs as spectacles of civilization. They will not speak of the women paraded naked through the streets, or the daughters sent to temples to serve gods they never believed in, or the mothers who vanished into the dark chambers of palaces to prove mercy through suffering. The empire's glory rests on their bones, but the earth remembers. The soil beneath every Roman road holds fragments of their voices. Prayers whispered into dust, vows made and broken, names repeated until they turn to wind. Their legacy lies not in marble inscriptions, but in bloodlines scattered across continents. Every child born of conquest carried the contradiction of empire in their veins, the conqueror's pride and the captive's grief. Rome's future was built in those bodies. Its myths of purity were born from violation. Its peace was written in the language of women who could no longer speak. Somewhere along the Palatine Hill, beneath layers of earth and time, a piece of bronze survives, green with age. It bears an inscription so faint that historians must trace it with light. It reads, in broken Latin, "She walked and Rome watched." No one knows who she was. Perhaps she was Callista from Judaea, or Sura from Dacia, or Aurelia from the Palatine, or Thea from the east, or Salonia from Carthage. Perhaps she was all of them. The women whose names were erased became the foundation of the empire that erased them. When we imagine Rome, the marble, the triumphs, the senators, the legions, we should also imagine the women who stood behind the curtains of those victories. They were not citizens, not free, not remembered, yet they were essential. They were the proof of power, the embodiment of conquest, the silent instruments of empire. Rome feared rebellion from men, but built its immortality upon the subjugation of women. Their suffering was the empire's heartbeat. Their silence was its anthem. And when the empire finally fell, when barbarians entered the city and flames touched its temples, no chronicler wrote of vengeance, but somewhere in that chaos, one might imagine a voice rising above the roar. Not a cry for mercy, but for remembrance. A whisper carried on smoke saying, "We were here. We mattered." If this journey through the hidden cruelty of Rome's triumphs has made you see history differently, don't let it end here. There are countless more stories buried beneath marble and myth, waiting to be uncovered. Click on the next video appearing on your screen to explore another chapter of the past that the world chose to forget. And if you believe these forgotten voices deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button so we can keep bringing the truth out of the shadows, one story at a time.